Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Expanse. Season 5, Episode 7 is called Oyedeng. So full spoilers for the episode as always. And I was curious about what the word was exactly. And it sounds very belter though. It sounds like a belter word.
It almost sounds like belter slang.
Yes, and it is. Because when I googled it, the first thing that popped up was the Expanse wiki, and it's just the word for farewell and goodbye, and belter apparently.
Okay.
If there's more to it than that, people can correct me in the comments. But that was my quick bit of research landed me there. But it's even when I just
researching episode names this season.
When I said it out loud, I'm like, "Oh, you dang!" I almost went into a belter accent just saying it because it just felt so belter.
Yeah.
But
you couldn't do a belter accent.
Easy.
You don't even know where to start.
You just say ting instead of thing. You just say teas instead of. And that's half
dialect,
of it.
not accent.
That's half of it. That's half of it. Shut up. So, this is an episode that focuses basically on just two plots, and really just the one in a sense.
It's like 80% now.
Yeah. Lot bit of Holden, and then by extension a little bit of Alex and Bobby, who kind of tie into that. But a lot of Naomi's plot here on the on whatever the ship's called. I don't know what the ship specifically is. I don't know if I mentioned it that much. Marco's ship.
Zemaya?
No. That's the one that Holden's after. It's a different ship.
Ah, okay, yes.
So we have heart-to-hearts with Philip. We have moments where it feels like she's getting through to him, and where he's maybe finally starting to understand, or at least respect why the choices she made, what they were. Because Marco comes in right at the start to talk to Philip, and there's a lot of him in this episode. There's a lot of good scenes of him manipulating or gauging things with Philip, because the opening scene, he comes in and he's asking about that ship your mother gave you, I know it's your ship, but I wanted to ask if I could use it to help the cause. I've got a plan. He's like, yeah, of course, anything. And it's like, okay, fine. But as he's leaving, he sort of points out why he felt he needed to ask. He turns around and says, because I know your mother gave you that ship and I thought it might hold sentimental value. He's trying to gauge to how much she's gotten to him.
There's a moment a little bit later where he realizes he's gone a little bit too far with what he's saying to him, and he's pushing him away, and you can see him clock and become aware and reel it back in. It's like, okay, time to butter him back up.
Yeah, that's because the heart-to-heart that she has, because Marco gives her free rein. He goes to Naomi and said, you can go around the ship again. If you try anything, no, this time you're just going to space. You're just gone. And even it's like a tense sequence of him trying to almost reminisce about their relationship, and it all kind of crescendos into her finally saying, because she's constantly having to defend that she left and she feels guilty about it, and for her son's sake, and we start to get a bit more of a visual this episode of, no, she didn't just like decide to leave her son and never, that was just that simple. It was, no, she wanted to take her son with her, and Marco hid Philip. And she tried for a long time, and then it obviously gets darker later on when we find out what she almost did. But and then when we do get that, we get that heart to heart with Philip, where it's a little moment where she's in his bunk and she's looking at his razor, and it's basically a moment of and he comes in and says, "Oh, you're going to try and use that to kill him now," but obviously what she's doing is she's looking at the fact that her son's shaving. The last time she saw him was a baby. We even get a little glimpse of that at the start of the episode, a little flashback of like a happy memory. Her hair's all grown out, and you've got baby Philip, and Marco's got his hair tied back in like a little ponytail. It's like, oh, this is a very different time.
I had to do something to make it clear it was different.
Yeah. But this becomes this thing where she starts to open up about why she left, and the big things here is, one, of course, that she almost killed herself. She basically, when she couldn't find him back in the day when she was trying to leave, she went to an airlock and was going to space herself. And only decided not to because she realised ultimately there was no difference. Either way, she wasn't going to be in his life. So there was essentially no need to at that point. Unless, of course, the pain was enough that she just wanted to die. But that was kind of her reasoning to ultimately not doing it. Which I also think wonderfully dovetails into some stuff with Sin as well, obviously after this. And then the other big thing is her appeal to Philip here. And the reason why she had to leave. It's not just that he's evil, but he is. And he's manipulative and he's all these things, but it was that she realized that she's not really herself. She's just a part of his plan. She's a part of, like, everything she does was his plan, or everything she does is for him. It's about making him happy. She was never living her own life, and she realized that, and that's essentially why she wanted to leave. And she then says, he's doing that to you. Everything you do, you're doing for him. The way you look at him, the way you do things. And Philip says, no, I'm my own man. I don't need either of you. And it's all about his independence. It's all about this kind of thing.
It's kind of almost to a point classic teenager stuff.
Yeah. But it's kind of put this idea in his head that everything he does is for him. And it does lead to a couple of big scenes later. The big one you were referring to is where he goes to Marco and asks to be given a ship.
He wants command, yeah.
He wants command, yeah. He wants to do more and sort of become his own man and prove that he is part of this.
And when Marco asks him, why, he goes, I want our people to know who I am as well. I know I'm part of this.
And Marco, maybe in the first real, obviously there's been hints of it, but this is the first real time we kind of see how much of this is his ego and how much of this is about the recognition, because he brings up footage of people on various stations chanting his name, people on the belt chanting Marco, and he gets really mad at it. He's like, they're not chanting Philip, they're chanting my name. I did this, I did all these things.
It's like all you've done is make mistakes and make it harder. Why do you deserve this?
And it's like, oh, this is going a certain way. This is clearly, this is where he's severing these ties. This is Philip's realizing, and as you say, Marco knowing that he's maybe like what he's doing here, he sort of clocks that he's went too far.
He's pushing him away, and he's like, oh no, this is a mistake.
He leans in and sort of turns it into a promise of like, one day it will be you, because you're my heir. When I'm gone, this is all going to transfer to you, and they're going to be chanting Philip, to the point where he gets the crew on the bridge to all start chanting Philip.
I love that he does it really sort of like, because it feels like it feels like almost a private conversation, like this personal conversation between the two. Don't get me wrong, he's loud, for most of this, but it still feels like it's just the two of them. It's close in on them, and he's back to being quiet at this point. He's just talking. He's almost whispering when he's like, they'll start chanting Philip, and then everyone just joins in. There's no prompting. They don't need it. Like he doesn't do anything. They know. Okay, this is the moment.
And this is, and it's not that we didn't know he was a manipulator before, but this was kind of like almost like a, from start to finish, where he reveals who he is, realizes that he's went too far, and has to manipulate back to a place where he's not going to lose Philip. And all of these motions, we go through the whole thing in the scene from start to finish, and we get a whole, it's like a full display, it's a full banquet of who Marco is in one scene. And it's probably the most evil he's ever felt. It's not even the most evil thing he's ever done, but it's the most evil he's ever felt because it's how he's able to control him. It's how he's able to seduce him with the power. Right.
This is we know he's evil, and we've heard about how charismatic and as a leader he is so important to the cause, right? And that's why so many people follow him. He's got quite a lot. He's got a full army here right now. But this is the first real showcase we've had of, on an individual level, of what sort of power he has, and understanding why and how he had Naomi, for example, for so many years, like how he managed it.
Yeah,
it's scary to see, I think, almost.
Yeah, it's done a really good job of sort of like delivering all the promises that the show has made about who he is, bit by bit, over the course of the season. All the little things we've gotten in scenes like this that kind of slowly kind of prove all the things we've heard about him. And it's very risky to do it that way around, but it's also very satisfying when it's successful, and I do think it is here, where we tease that he's this massive manipulator, we tease that he's this, very charismatic guy who can get people to follow him. But the idea that he actually, like, that's kind of the part that he loves the most, is he feeds on that a little bit, that he's obsessed with having that recognition of it being about him. It's not like full Homelander, but I was getting a little Homelander vibe of needing to be...
I get it. You definitely get the idea that this is less about the ideology and less about, being the unifying Belter force, as it is about him being at the head of the Belter Empire.
Yeah.
That's the important part to him more than anything. At least that's how it feels.
Yes, the idea that he wouldn't sacrifice himself, but he'll sacrifice everyone else around him for the goal, for the belt, the Free Navy, all that. And in fact, one of the first scene with Naomi as well, with him when he brings up Holden, he's like, "Oh, Holden, James Holden must be, quite a man to keep you around." And she steps and says, "He's everything you're not."
I think it's everything you pretend to be.
Yeah, everything you pretend to be. That was the line.
Because it really stuck out to me. That was a good line.
It was a good line. It was because even in that scene, you notice some, because she straight up says, "You've not killed me yet," because he threatens her, of course, but she says, "You've not." No, the reason why you've not killed me yet is because you know that it'll prove me right. Because it'll be the thing that maybe puts Philip over the edge, where he'll actually see the charade and that you've been threatened, and that therefore you are not as strong as you appear to be, because I'm a threat. And
it's classic strongman rule of politics, in that he's only the leader because other people perceive him to be strong. If that perception is gone, the power is gone.
And he tries to deflect it, and he keeps going back to the same well. He keeps going back to, "No, you abandoned her son. So no, the only reason why I've not killed you is because I didn't want his mother to abandon him again." But we know he wanted to kill her, and then he immediately wants to kill her again, because whenever it comes up later with everyone else. And I think one of my favorite running gags of this episode is in the scene with Philip. There's a lot of gags in this episode, but there's one running gag that I really like, which is Marco's not told anyone on the ship that he's let her out. So there's a couple of scenes of like people walking into a room. It happens with Philip, and it happens later in the dining area with Sin, where he walks in and he's like, "Oh, this is Naomi's."
What are you doing here?
Do I have to get my helmet? It's like, And I think this episode, obviously it's great for what it does for Naomi, and she has the big ending, which we'll talk about, but I think Sin is a very impressive piece of writing, because he's a new character to us. He's only been around for a few episodes, really, and I think this episode gave us a great tragedy of this character, of someone who is good inherently at their heart, wants to do the right thing, but he's been manipulated too long by someone else, and he actually wants to do the right thing by her. And we have this whole scene there where they reminisce about old times, they both have the drink, they talk about the old days, and he admits, like, he breaks down in tears. It's actually a really good performance, I thought. He breaks down in tears about the fact that he lied. He knew where Philip was when she was looking for him all those years ago, and he bought into Marco's thing, and he didn't want the family to split up.
It wasn't just that he knew it; he'd helped hide him and helped, lie to Naomi and keeping her away. And
the biggest regret of his life is the night where he watched her almost commit suicide. He saw her go there, and and it was really nice we'd heard about this just before. So when he started bringing this up, it all sort of clicked together.
This might be my favorite episode of the season so far, because every time Naomi has a one-on-one conversation with someone is like award-winning writing and performances.
And the kind of is. There's a
lot, like the Naomi and Philip one, and then this one was Sin. It's just every single scene I'm like edge of my seat of just these two people talking.
Yeah, he's breaking down, and at the end of the scene he says, when I saw you there in the canteen, on the station that earlier on when they first ran into each other, I thought, oh, maybe it's my time. And that's, I kind of like, I didn't really need this, but it kind of retroactively explains why he did, like, give the message to Philip. Because obviously he wasn't supposed to, but he did it, and Philip came to see her, and it sort of led us on this path. It retroactively explains why he still went and did that when Naomi asked, even though he was supposed to not know anything.
Lingering guilt.
Yeah. So that's really neat. But she says, well, you can help, you can make up for it now. She doesn't get mad, she doesn't get upset. She says, you can make up for it now, help me. So, it put me on this hopeful kind of like, is Sin going to back her up and help her escape or help her do something, whatever it may be, like, but is he going to be there for her? And the great tragedy of this episode is that it feels like he wants to be, and he tries, but then we have this big scene where it's after the chanting Philip scene, where Marco, to reassert his dominance, to say, no, I am in charge, what you have tried to do here has failed. He has Naomi come up to the bridge and says that she's going to be free to go, but it's going to be after they use her ship to lure in the Rassi to kill everyone, and after you've watched your family die, then you're free. And it's this really evil thing, and he's like, it was Philip's idea. And the whole time Sin's standing over at the say as well, like, he's not happy about this, he's very awkward, he's sort of sitting there
every time, she'll look over and he just can't look at her.
Yeah,
he has to turn away
because he's not been strong enough to do something about it and sort of fight back. Because we had that one confrontation, like, last episode or whatever it was, where he tried to stand up to him a little bit about, why do you keep trying to, be hard on her, whatever. I think it's even this episode earlier on where he says, if you're not happy with me holding her here captive, you're free to go. They do kind of come to these moments a couple of times. But she leads into Philip to try and say, is this true? Don't be him. Like, you're not your father. And probably in the most, I don't want to say shocking, but the moment that kind of made me go, oh shit, is Philip just slaps her in the face. And it feels really brutal. And the way Naomi looks back at him with tears in her eyes is, and they've played this really well, where it's like, okay, are they going to do the thing where she convinces him who his father is? Or are we going down the route where he's too far gone? And they've done this thing where they've kind of done both, where they've sort of started to do it, but what they've done is they've shown how good Marco is at what he does by bringing him back.
I think there's an inevitability at this point in that Philip will essentially follow his mother's path, in that he will realize what's happened and he will understand, but it'll be too late. It'll be, I mean, he's already committed atrocities and some pretty heinous things, but it'll be after something worse that it finally kind of understands.
That was one of the great moments as well in that speech, or the scene with Naomi earlier on, was the I thought was a really good bit of writing, was when she's talking about how, so much of my like hopes for you, like I always hoped, like, I dreamed of the man you'd become, who you would be, and even
the
when I
freedom
was
to
away,
do anything.
Yeah, like, and even when I was away, the idea of like who you were going to become and blah blah. And now, unfortunately, all I'm doing is hoping that one day you'll feel regret for what you've already done. And that line I thought was really good. That was a really good line.
This is what I mean. Every single time that she's in a one-on-one conversation this episode, there are like 2 or 3 spectacular lines.
The slap hit me hard though. It really stung.
It's the shock of it, I think, especially in this episode where everything with Naomi has been this verbal sparring, and it's been intense and emotional, but it's all been this verbal stuff, and then all of a sudden there's a physical action to it.
They keep making Marco a better villain, and this working, and Philip going this hard against his mother is...
There's a wonderful element to that no matter what Philip does, it makes us hate Marco more.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, we're projecting, anything he does is projected onto Marco by association.
Well,
it's really impressive.
It's the old adage: if your villain doesn't work, then your story doesn't work. So if your villain is really good, then your story is really good. And this is just kind of like almost proving that over
it definitely
and over.
helps, doesn't it?
So and there's a couple of shots like throughout all this stuff where we see like Sin's went over, they're docked with her little ship, and like he's been doing stuff, maybe sabotaging it, whatever.
I think so, yeah.
And he comes over, but we have this big emotional sequence towards the end, where they take her, and I will admit I was a little confused because I thought they locked her in a cell again, but clearly they didn't, because there's no explanation or how she gets out. So I assume they just put her back in her room and like,
I don't think they needed to. Again, it was the whole thing of you can just wander around, do what you want. We don't care. You can't do anything.
Yeah. So, but and the reason why this is so beautiful is because they brought up that they attempted suicide when she was younger, and they brought up how she was going to do it, which was the airlock and spacing herself.
Sin, mentioned the look on her face.
Yeah. So when he sits down at his his comms, and he like brings up, okay, where's Naomi, and he sees her standing at the airlock, he immediately feels the same guilt that he did all those years ago.
I love that as well. Like, he's already suspecting something because he actively searches for where is she, what's she doing. So he knows that, okay, she's not in a good headspace, clearly.
He's a teller, because even the way that the scene kind of... Because, after she's like taken away from the bridge, like Marco's there, Philip's there, and everyone kind of goes to their places, and because Marco, I think, like pats Sin on the shoulder, say, yeah, good job, getting things done, and sticking by my side, kind of like pat, right? And we see him sort of walk up to his little centre area, and we see, like, he goes out of frame, but you sort of see his hand go on the barrier when he's back the banister when he goes up. And we actually just stay on Sin, and we follow him back to his chair. So he's kind of our teller out of the scene into this little extra like section where he looks for Naomi.
I think that's pretty important, yeah.
Yeah, it shows that like from the moment she's left, he's thinking about her. It stays with him the entire time until he looks. So he runs to go get her, and they're undocking from the ship, and they're going to leave. And he runs in just as the first airlock door, because obviously all the airlocks have 2 doors. They have the outer door and the inner door.
That's how they work, yeah.
Yeah. So he just jumps into the inner door, at the last second. It says, Naomi, don't do this. And Naomi turns around, very resolved in what she's about to do, and says, you shouldn't have followed me. And we can see that she's got... This is, again, just a few episodes ago, we had this oxygen thingamajig, the inhaler, but the
booster,
yeah, the syringe,
the oxygenated blood, yeah.
But
What I do want to mention here as well is I don't know if Philip missed this or overlooked it or just let it slide, because when she's dragged to the bridge, Marco makes Philip search her for any weapons. And he says she's all clean. I don't. Maybe she picked it up afterwards.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it doesn't feel like she did to me.
I just assumed she got it after, because I assumed that her this plan to do this only became a thing when she was left on her own after that scene.
It's very possible. It just didn't feel like she went to pick it up to me. Maybe I'm missing something. Because
her real family being threatened like this, the certain death of them, and the idea that there's no hope for her to succeed here, I think it's what motivates her. I just assume these oxygenated pens are just kind of lying around because it's space and that's like a common thing to have.
It's very possible, yeah.
So I never suspected she had it on her already. I don't know why she would, but Philip does see this. It's worth mentioning. He sees all this stuff at the end.
He notices Sin kind of looking and kind of like twigs on that something's happening.
Yeah, so he sees all this, and maybe this kind of selfless act of her trying to like do this to save her people is maybe something that'll even inspire Philip a little bit, or maybe make him doubt Marco again.
I'm not sure exactly what she's going to manage to do at first, because I think they said they disabled the controls on her ship.
Oh sure, I mean we can speculate. Let's talk about the actual scene itself though, because basically what she does is she launches herself with no suit from the airlock over to the other ship, and this is the other thing. So not only did we have the oxygen blood booster earlier in the season, we also had the scene of Alex jumping from one ship to the other. So I think it's very neat that they made a very clear point of like showing us both elements of this already this season. And there's something here I want to bring. Well, there's two things I want to bring up, right? Because one thing is that movies and TV have kind of taught us some things that are maybe a bit false about space.
Yeah, this show has had a couple of bodies in vacuum a few times and taught us the reality, I guess, a bit more.
And there's been a lot of talk on Twitter and a lot of people asking the creator and stuff about this, and like how
every time it happens, this comes up.
How long does someone survive in space? You know, why? Because Sin does die really quickly. Because Sin goes to grab her as the outer doors are opening, and you know, kind of freezes in place and just sort of dies very quickly. But the idea that you actually, because one of the things that comes up a lot, and I've seen this in a lot of other shows and movies, is the idea that you would freeze to death quite quickly because it's space and it's, you know, freezing. It's cold. But one of the things that doesn't get brought up as much, and this is just me looking this up after this episode because I was curious, is that you don't actually cool down that quickly because there's nowhere for the heat to go, or at least not as many quick places for the heat to go. So that's, you don't freeze that quickly. So that sort of solves that. Because
I think there was something I've seen before where you theoretically it could be like 10 or 15 minutes before you froze to death because of, you know, what your body temperature is and how long it takes for it to cool down at that point.
That's assuming you can still breathe, though. I assume.
Theoretically, it would take that long.
Yeah. Because you're going to be dying from the lack of oxygen much quicker than that.
Long before that, of course. That's why I said theoretically it would take that long to freeze.
Yeah, and apparently you don't meant to hold your breath in space. You just want your blood to be oxygenated, and she stabs her with this halfway through. So it's like mid jump. She does this to try and give her the amount of time she needs to get in. To the other airlock, and it's not like she's just magically okay. She's clearly physically very roughed up when she arrives. But it's this really beautiful moment where all the sound goes away and everything sort of like sucks out, and then obviously when you feel the sound of her hitting the ship, you know, the idea. Because I think one of the things the show's done really well is that you wouldn't really hear any of this, but it's the idea of it representing the feeling of hitting it through the sound.
Yeah, there's there's still a. It's almost as if our camera is connected to
the ship,
the body, or the ship. Yeah, either or, depending on the scenario. Like sometimes it's connected to like the suit they're wearing, and you feel the impact more than hear it.
Yeah, it does it a lot because there's even shots in this episode with missiles hitting things, and you do hear the guns. But again, it's like the idea is that the camera's either touching the turrets or it's touching the missiles that it's hitting. The idea that we're feeling the impact of everything.
Yeah, and honestly, what is a little bit more important, at least to me, rather than just sheer realism. Like, we can have realism in the rules that it follows, which obviously this show does religiously. But in the actual filming of it, make it the most entertaining to watch, rather than just strictly being, well, there's no sound here, so you won't hear anything.
I mean, it's all contextual. It's all based, you know, scene to scene.
Sure.
It's all style to style, because honestly, you say that, but there is power in having complete silence. There's also power in having just music, because music's not really there anyway. Music's just
right.
on top. But
this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying don't do silence. I'm saying there shouldn't be a hard and fast rule where, oh, we're in space, so absolutely no sound. I'm like, sometimes it's better to, like, I would rather hear the guns here than just see them. I think it makes for a better TV show, which ultimately is what this is.
Sure. I don't feel particularly strongly. I think you could just have the guns be silent, and that would be kind of surreal in itself because it's guns. You expect them to be loud. You expect impact,
but it's a completely different atmosphere to the scene, then, isn't it?
So that's the one thing. Now the other thing here that's quite interesting from the books, right? And this is not a spoiler. This is just a general thing from the books that the show's not really went into as much, although there's kind of hints of it here or there. Is the idea that a lot of the Belters are actually much better at doing this kind of thing. So if you take the example of Alex doing it a few episodes ago, he's in the suit and he jumps to the ship and it's this really tense moment. And we did have an example of this. The season 4 finale had Naomi jumping. Remember the big line, and she's got to grab the women and stuff. So we've had examples, but the idea that Belters, one of the advantages they maybe have over the people who are born on Earth or Mars, is that because they're kind of, and that's one of the lines in this episode even is Marco says, I was there for his first spacewalk. The idea
I was
that's
just
something,
gonna say, like that's something that's common. He kind of he puts it alongside like first steps, first spacewalk. Like I think the moments that a mother should be there. Like these are just really everyday moments for Belters. This is how they live.
And I generally wonder what age is your first spacewalk typically when you're a Belter? Is it like 7, 8? Is it that kind of age?
I'd say 8 or 10 probably.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Because on the one hand, it's really normal for you guys out here in the belt. On the other hand, it's also still extremely dangerous, no matter how common it is. So.
It feels like the reason I say 8 or 10 is it feels like in the just sort of like ancient world. This is like boyhood into manhood starts at that sort of age.
Learn to hunt kind of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that that's when you become a man, but that's when you start preparing for it. And this feels like a similar thing.
Yeah. So it was just an interesting thought because I did see some people complaining online, and I didn't really care about this. This was the idea that it's like so effortless how she's able to like aim this well and all that. But it was just through that conversation people pointed out that in the books the Belters typically are said to be very good at this kind of thing and have like basically just like a
It's not even like it's an instinct or an advantage. It's just presumably just practice for societal reasons. Just that's how they live. They're used to no gravity all the time. They shoot themselves at odd angles a lot. A
natural just kind of affinity for it because they've been in this situation. And I think just in terms of the show, even if that's not been heavily implied as much, like I said, there's an example of Naomi doing something similar. I was in a spacesuit, but doing something similar last episode. And obviously, the moment of her jumping from the one airlock to the other with no suit is like that's the point she's at. It shows how dire this is, and that I can't succeed here. Clearly, I've tried, I've failed. I got as close as I was ever going to with Philip, as far as I can do. They're going to kill Holden and everyone else I care about. I'm going to try. I might fail, but the only option she really sees as having left is trying to do something to stop that.
Basically, when Philip slapped her, it's like, well, he's made his choice, and maybe he'll still come around. Who knows? But she decides that in that moment, there's nothing more she can do. Speaking
of performance, her being dragged out of the room screaming "I hate you" to Marco also hit Tom quite a bit. Really, really good stuff.
Oh, man, she is so good in this episode.
So yeah, I have nothing to like. The ending's beautiful. I was such a great moment. And there's a moment that I know everyone's going to compare this to from a really bad movie, but I will say this looked much better. It felt much better. It was way more impactful because of the emotions driving the scene, and it's not Star Wars, so therefore better, just by default.
Do you know what? I was struggling to think of what movie you were comparing it to because you said bad movie. So I was like racking my brains of well-known bad movies. Like, what is this that you're referring to?
Honestly, I mean, it isn't even really that much like that, outside of just, the idea of someone floating through space. Because, I mean, for a start, Naomi doesn't have her hand out as if she's Superman, as she's floating across.
Completely, look, we are not here to discuss The Last Jedi again.
But I've definitely seen in many other sci-fi, in space, someone doing the jump from an airlock to an airlock. It's a very common thing that happens in spaceship stuff. And it'll usually be in a suit or it'll be something else. Having done it recently on the Ace, there's a scene in Sunshine where they don't have quite enough suits, so they sort of wrap them in like sort of like the space blankets and stuff, and they've got they're trying to just like bundle them up enough to survive the jump. To get across.
I think Gravity has like 3 or 4 moments like this.
All in a suit, but yeah, a lot of the jumping and stuff. Yeah. So it's a very common thing, but there's the moments where it like goes into her eyes and you can see like the blood and all the little effects that are happening on her body because she is in a vacuum, and that's the other thing as well. Someone asked the creators on Twitter, Sin dies basically immediately, and she's able to last the 10, 15 seconds, whatever it is, and it's just the idea that she knows what she's about to do. She's a belter. She's preparing. She's I think I saw someone suggest that one of the things she might do is to breathe deeply for like a minute before she does this to make sure her oxygen's all flowing.
Yeah,
and
preparedness, right? And she's presumably preparing for the pressure. She's like breathing in the right way, getting her lungs to the right state. Whereas
the equivalent, he's
just desperately trying to reach.
Yeah, and he's running as well and all that. So he's already kind of out of breath by the time he's kind of there. But I guess the closest comparison is just though it's someone falling into water unexpectedly versus someone who holds their breath and is prepared to like try and last a minute.
Right. Otherwise, no one would ever drown.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's situations.
No one who can swim.
Yeah, there's situations where you might be held underwater even if you can hold your breath for like 3 minutes. So
sure, fine.
Drownings would still happen. People would just magically not drown.
But a lot of drownings happen because of the shock.
Yes, a lot of drownings that would be minimized. Yes,
and I do think it's worth pointing out here that Sin is a significantly older man.
Oh sure,
in comparison, right? Like he's presumably not as healthy. He's an older, bigger guy. He's like I say, he's just ran. He's out of breath. That's got to use up a lot of your oxygen already. It doesn't surprise me. It all seems perfectly plausible to me.
And he ran all the way down to the airlock. It's not just the run from the airlock door to try and grab her. Just
right, that's what I meant. Yeah.
I'm just pointing out because he's ran the whole way because he's already kind of like out of breath by the time he gets there. Yeah. So no, beautiful moment, and it shows just how determined. And the idea of her like wanting to save Holden and everyone else this much, and that this is a lost cause, just really hits home because that is the family that we've built in the show. It's the one that we care about. And the other characters, I mean, a lot of their stuff is related to this because Holden is in pursuit on the Rassi. After this, the other ship, the Zamara, whatever it's called, that's got the proto-molecule, or seemingly has the proto. I mean, obviously, it's very clear later that Marco's already switched it, so, big whoop, I guess. But the idea is that they're essentially accepted that this ship is going to be lost. I don't even know if there's going to be crew on it, to be honest, because it seems like they've planned for this. That this ship's a goner.
On which ship?
The ship that they're chasing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Because we don't actually see anything. And it's not like there's anyone on the little Naomi ship, because they were going to use that as a trap. Yeah. So this could just equally be crewless. Even if it isn't, though, there's loyal Marco followers who are willing to sacrifice themselves, I guess.
Acceptable casualties, martyrs for the cause.
It works either way. But it's a great little action scene here, though, because maybe there is someone there because maybe someone has to manually fire these missiles, but a bunch of missiles do get launched at the Rassi, and we get this great sequence where they have to spin the ship and shoot all the missiles.
I love the visuals because it looks like the missiles are flying backwards.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm pretty sure is happening is they're just decelerating, so it looks like the Rassi's either speeding up or maintaining its speed, so it looks like they're moving backwards in comparison. It's like the same thing, like when you open a parachute and it looks like they go up because they're decelerating, but the camera is still going down at the same speed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same effect as that, essentially.
Yeah. It's just a wonderful visual because they're spinning as the guns are firing, so you get this kind of like spinning kind of like, and because there's X number of turrets, you have like almost like a fireworks show of like the equally spaced out gunshots happening as it's spinning.
Yeah,
but it's a nice moment. And of course, the ship self detonates. And that's basically that. But the other thing, of course, is that he gets a message from Alex, and Alex is like, "Hey, we're on our way to Tycho. We'll explain all this crap we've been through when we get there." But Holden noticed that, wait, that was not a long delay in that message. He must be much closer than he should be if he's on Mars.
It's like, what the hell's he doing out here? He's meant to be on Mars.
Yeah. So he sends a message back, and Alex equally goes, "Hey, that was quick. He must. What's going on?" It's like, "Oh yeah, we're not in Tycho anymore. We're chasing down this ship." But Alex and Bobby, and they have a little funny moment actually, where
I did laugh properly.
Vasarala's like sent a message back to them saying, "Okay, with all the information you've given us, blah blah," and Alex says, "It's weird that she didn't mention that built her ship we took out, the OPA ship." And Bobby goes, "Oh, I didn't mention that." And Alex looks disappointed because like he wants the credit for it almost. And he's like, "I'll give you one of my old medals if you want one."
Yeah, that and the bit where she pulls a bullet off herself, and he's like, "You got shot," and she's like, "Well, yeah." It's like, does it hurt? It's like itches.
The exact line was, "Did you get shot?" A lot. A lot. But yeah, so they send all the ship schematics and codes and whatnot to Holden so that he knows what ships he might be running into if he's wherever he's chasing. And they notice Naomi's ship's on there, and they're like, "Oh shit, this is bad." And he has a moment where like Monica and Bull are worried that he might make the call to like chase her instead of the ship with the proto-molecule. And he's like, no, this is the more important thing. But he sends a message back to Alex, "Hey, can you track Naomi's ship?" Which is, I suspect, Alex and Naomi should be running into each other then, presumably at some point soon, because they're on their way to her ship. She's on the ship now. Maybe not in great physical condition as well. She might need medical assistance.
It's very possible. Yeah.
I can see her, barely struggling to try and like find whatever's booby trapped or whatever in her current state. Or something. I mean, we'll see what they focus on.
And I wonder how much precautions they take. So see, with Holden on the Rossi, when they were after this other ship, I think it was Bull who shouted out, like, "Hey, before we go over there, send some drones." They might have rigged the door, for as soon as it opens. So that's what they do. But will Alex take the same precautions? And even if he thinks of them, or Bobby probably would think of them more than anything, is this ship equipped with any of that sort of things? Because they're not on a gunship.
Yeah, my expectation would just be the idea is they dock, and then once they come on board, it'll blow up. Is maybe the idea. So that's my guess.
The question is, can Naomi get a message to them in time to stop that happening?
Well, I wasn't even thinking message. I was thinking more she would find whatever the booby trap is and unbooby it.
Also possible, yeah.
Would have been my guess. But again, maybe if she's not physically capable, I mean, apparently. The one example we have of someone being in a vacuum, again, this is coming from the creator's Twitter, the guy turned out fine. I don't know how quickly he turned out fine though, if it was, but so
no
we'll
lasting impact.
No lasting impact. Is the point.
Yeah.
But no, it's all this stuff is. I think the most impressive. I mean, maybe not the most impressive because everything in Naomi's fantastic, but I think Sin's like tragedy and the tragedy of him trying to save her at the end. But basically, he's already failed to make the difference where it could have counted in the episode. Because I was excited. I was excited for him helping her. I'm like, oh, he's going to help her and do something to like get her off the ship.
At the end of the day, he did what most people do and was just too afraid in the moment where it counted.
Yeah, he failed. And it's not that she goes out of her way to kill him. Because she says, "I wish you hadn't followed me," because she knows he's about to die because of what she's going to do. And it's not enough to make her stop. Because at this point, it's not important enough. It's not. Yeah. At this point, it's about saving everyone else she cares about. But so we're getting to this point now where characters are going to start to theoretically come together. Obviously, Amos is still way away from everyone else, but some of these other characters are starting to be relatively close. In the context.
I
of
almost
space.
thought Alex was going to try and dock and take over at one point in this episode when they were like, "Oh no, we're pretty close. We'll meet up," but obviously not. We're keeping them apart.
Yeah. So. If anything, I'm a little worried that Naomi's getting so much time this season that there could be a big death for her at the end of the season if that's what they wanted to do.
It's possible, yeah.
This is so much development and so much payoff to her backstory that.
Like I said, I think this episode is probably my favorite season, and it's all because of Naomi, and by extension, like the sin stuff as well. That's obviously part of it, but that's so intrinsically tied to her plot and just all that stuff. So good.
Yeah, I almost see a thing where she like sacrifices herself to almost prove to Philip that they can make a better choice. But then again, I also kind of expect that she's back next season. In fact, I think she's even confirmed to be back, the actress. So probably not.
Yeah, but they might have said that.
Yeah,
that
true.
Was I wouldn't blame them for I don't blame any TV, movie producers, showrunners, whoever, for lying when it comes to those sorts of things to preserve your story. Because if you go, well, no, she's not back next season, everyone's like, okay, then.
Yeah. There's no problem with lying about that. By all means, if anything, I want movie creators to lie to me more often. The more they lie about things to preserve spoilers, the better.
It became a bit of a joke with Doctor Who, with Stephen Moffat when he was showrunner, where the fandom would be like, Moffat lies, because I think he had a thing in Doctor Who where is the Doctor lies, never trust him, and it became like a self-parody, as this reflection of him as a creator, because he would consistently just tell lies for the sake of preserving the story, and it became like you can't trust anything he says when he says, oh, this character will be in the future, because that meant it was meaningless, which I kind of like.
Yeah. This one little scene that I think I wanted to mention as well before we wrap up is there's a scene just before they get the call from Alex, I think it is, with Bill and Holden, where they talk about Fred. And it's a nice little scene because Holden, Bill says, oh, you're not like Fred. You always think you know what's right for everyone. And he talks about how Fred was... He describes it as Fred, drove him up the wall, but he respected Fred because... You spend enough time with anyone, you kind of eventually see how they're kind of full of shit and how they kind of like are phony in some way. How they kind of say they're for certain things, but they're kind of cowards in ways or whatever. I'm extrapolating a lot of this, but that was the sentiment. But he never did with Fred. He never found Fred to be full of shit. Like, he was always like very devout and whatever. And he sort of compares Holden to Fred. But Holden has a little moment here afterwards because they have a little joke about Fred once said he wanted to be like. Space like any belt or whatever.
Put to the recycler.
The recycler, yeah. He's like, screw that. He's getting a proper send off. Like, I don't give a shit what he wanted.
And Holden's like, you're gonna deny him his last wishes? It's like, damn right I am.
But Holden admits that he never really quite trusted Fred. He always thought he was playing an angle, and he was wrong because he never lied to him. And it's kind of this acceptance, and it's like, yeah, maybe the reason why you felt that way is because you were so alike. It's just part of the thing.
I like the idea as well that potentially Fred might have been playing him a little bit. Like I say, he never lied to him, but also he told him the things he wanted to tell him at the correct times to kind of push him in the directions that suited Fred to a degree, I think. I kind of like that because we did always play with the idea of like how much can we, the viewer, because we're following the Rassi crew, and Fred's like, it seems like kind of an ally, but how much can we trust what he's trying to do? Does he have intentions? And we always had that feeling throughout the show, like Holden did. And I think there is something kind of beautiful about after his death, which was shocking when it happened. It was out of relatively nowhere, and it was a big moment. I think there's something about kind of learning that no, he was actually as good as he seemed to be after the fact, and like almost the guilt that we can feel with Holden for not fully embracing him and trusting him. It's kind of nice. I get that. It's kind of a sweet way to respect someone after they've died. So I always love when a show can really make a death of a character who's been, especially a long running character, matter. So I appreciate that. Especially one that's not been like a main character. Like, he's been around a lot and we know him well enough, but he's never been one of our characters. So it's harder to make that land.
I brought up the creators a lot. I always say singular because the Twitter handle presents itself as one person, but it's actually two guys. But I also want to bring up the Twitter of one Mr. Jared Harris.
Oh, I saw this and laughed because after our conversation last episode.
He doesn't say anything about coming back or anything like that, but he just says how much he's enjoying the new season of The Expanse. And I'm like, well, if he loves the show, he must be willing to come back before the end.
It sounds like, at worst, the reasons he would say no are, one, they just don't ask him because for whatever reason they don't have the script. Or two, it's going to be scheduling would be the only reason he'd say no.
Scheduling, pandemic, whatever. But I feel like he probably wants to be back. He seems to be really enthusiastic about it. But the thing that I want more than anything is I want to know what Dawes thinks of Marco. I want to know what Dawes thinks of what he's done.
I kind of want this to be a hint, and he's actually already in this season. We just don't know it yet.
Sure. Yeah, he could be toying with us. That's entirely possible. Yeah. I mean, hell, I could see like Marco dying in the final episode of the season, and like, the stinger at the end of the season being that Dawes is back, and that Dawes is going to be like a main, maybe not a villain, but like a main presence.
Try and kind of pick up the pieces of Marco's empire, so to speak.
And it could be the sort of thing where it's not that Dawes necessarily ever wanted to this kind of war with the Inners, but now that it's all been put into motion, there's no stopping it. So now he has to come in and lead. kind of thing. I don't know, something like that.
He's
Possible.
out of like the belters we've had as leaders. Marco, Fred, Dawes. Dawes up there as one of the only ones charismatic enough and liked enough potentially to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. So interesting stuff there. It'd be a hell of a return as well. So no, another great episode this season. And I think what's impressive, and I don't know if it's my favorite, because it's like you've got the big action spectacle stuff of like asteroids hitting Earth, and the fallout of that is being fully big and impactful on a larger scale. You've got this more personal, emotional scale. We talked about how good the last one was for Amos, and like in a personal way, but it was different from this. I think what's impressive is every time we come back and we say it's another great episode, most of them are great episodes in very different ways, and I think that's making this season feel constantly fresh, despite the fact that it is so serialized and everything's following on from one another.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of the reason why I'm more confident in saying this is my favorite one is because all the Naomi stuff is so good and emotional, but also I get a nice, good action ship sequence that we haven't really had this season. And, sucker for a good ship action sequence. So yeah, I get a little bit of that as well to tide me over. So, it all comes together for me on this one.
Yeah, so there you go. That's episode 7, which actually brings us up to date with the release. We can't just go watch the next one anymore, which we've been able to do.
We made it.
So we'll see you. We'll be recording episode 8 for our it's Wednesdays. I'll double check that, obviously, but I'm sure you'll tell us in the comments.
I believe it is Wednesdays, yes.
But we'll be watching the new one on Wednesday, episode 8, and recording that night. And the review should be out on the Thursday. So that is the plan. So that should be the plan for the last 3 episodes. We're 2/3 through. It's went too quick.
It sucks that there's only like 3 left. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's a whole other season coming down the line, but I want more now.
Yeah.
But I want it weekly.
Would it be too much to ask if season 6 turns out to... Oh, by the way, just a slight correction on that. It's going to be a 30-episode season, because I would take it. That's what I'm saying. That is episode 7 of the Expanse season 5. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters for mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show, you can of course hit the like button and subscribe. Those are the free ways to do it on YouTube, and they're very important because it's how YouTube judges success and shares us out to more people. Helps us grow. You can also support us financially at patreon.com/mailfuzztv and help keep all the content coming. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?